Hello, go ahead and open up your composition notebooks. If you haven't set up your table of contents yet, this goes in on the second page of your notebook. The table of contents will be on the first page, and you can write suspense and plot, and then page number 2, if this is what's going to start on page number 2, in the table of contents. On that second page, go ahead and write suspense and plot up at the top. Just for your reference, as you're taking these notes, you can pause at any time. You can also rewind it at any time. You do not have to write down everything word for word. Just write it down for your understanding. There will be a note check to make sure that you have all of the notes, but it doesn't have to be word for word. So if it makes sense for you to write it a different way, feel free to do so. The very first thing we want to write down on our suspense and plot page is, what is suspense? Suspense is the tension and nervous uncertainty you sometimes feel when reading. It also can be watching a movie. Suspense keeps you guessing, reading, and wondering about the outcome. If you've ever been on the edge of your seat in the movie theater, you're feeling suspense. Writers create suspense by withholding key details or hinting at events to come. The list I'm about to show you on the next slide will probably shatter some of your feelings about some of your favorite books and movies, because you'll realize a lot of them use the same methods to get that suspense feeling. Remember, if you're not done with this slide, just hit pause now and finish writing. Here are the ways to develop suspense. You don't have to write everything word for word, but do make sure you jot down what each of these is about. 1, create a lofty viewpoint. Allow readers to see both protagonist and antagonist thoughts and intentions. It helps if we can see the good guys, the bad guys, the in-between guys, and what they are doing, what their motivations are. Think of like a Game of Thrones thing where there's an ensemble cast. There is no main character. There's lots of main characters. We know the good guys, we know the bad guys, and we know what they're up to. Number 2, use time constraints. There's a deadline to chaos. So how long until a bomb goes off? How long do we have to play Hunger Games before the island blows up? Or how long until the volcano erupts? Or how long until the storm gets here? There's a time constraint. Keep the stakes high. Number 3, whatever's about to happen, it is important to the protagonist's world. If you care about the protagonist, that's your main character. If you care about Harry Potter, you care about whatever's going to happen with Voldemort. You care if he has a girlfriend. You might care if he has bad punishment at school. Whatever it is, if we're invested in the character, we feel the tremendous loss along with Harry. Those stakes are high. 4, apply pressure. The odds are not in your favor. So Katniss joins to be in the Hunger Games because she volunteers as tribute, but then we find out so much more, like the odds are really, really stacked against her. So we've got to add those things in because it creates suspense. How can she overcome all of this? 5, create dilemmas. Suspense loves dilemmas. They should be seemingly lose-lose for the protagonist. It can be as simple as, I don't want to rat out my best friend, so now I'm going to get suspended. So either I hurt my friend or I get in trouble at school, lose-lose, or it can be something even like life or death. So I can't save both friends at the same time. One has to die. It's lose-lose. 6, complicate matters. Chaos requires a chain of events that creates more problems than solutions. Jurassic Park, my favorite book, has a ton of these. So it's not just that the dinosaurs are escaping the island, but the dinosaurs have found a way around their lysine deficiency so they can survive off the island. But it's not just that, because the dinosaurs have been breeding and the computers didn't catch that. And it's not just that, but now they've escaped. We just keep compounding things, add more and more and more. Be unpredictable. The unimaginable is possible. That main character who has no ties to the throne and has no name might discover that he is the secret son of 2 very important people, and now he's the heir to the Iron Throne. Maybe there's magic involved or a spell we didn't know existed. Be unpredictable. Don't rule anything out. Anything could come in and save the day, or anything could come in and make it worse. And then 8, create a really good villain and a really good hero. The reader has to care to invest. I remember when they were advertising for the last Harry Potter novel and the last Harry Potter movie, they talked a lot about, you've been with him the whole way, now be with Harry at the end. And people were so invested in Harry and what he was doing that they were really tied to that story. If you care a lot about your character, you will care about these suspense factors. Remember, if you're not done writing, go ahead and pause. Otherwise, let's move on. Here's a plot diagram. Go ahead and pause here. quiz yourself and see if you remember these points. If you don't, they're going to be on the next slide. Either way, go ahead and draw this into your notes. All right. Hopefully you remembered everything and this is all just good review for you. The plot is a sequence of events that moves the story from problem to solution. I'm going to go through these with a bit more detail on the next slide with definitions. If you want to go ahead and label your plot line, go ahead and do that. The very beginning is either called beginning or exposition. We usually call it exposition in English class. That point where it goes from exposition to rising action is actually the initial conflict. And we will have that on the next slide, but it's not labeled here. But there is a little point right there where it starts to rise up, that's the initial conflict. Then you have your rising action. Then you have your climax. It's really not the middle of the story. We just put middle on there. It's not really the middle, but it's kind of like the middle of the sequence of events. It's what happens in the middle of the plot line. And then you have your falling action, and then you have your end or resolution. Go ahead and label that plot line if you haven't already, and meet me over here for the definitions on the next slide. Here are the definitions. The exposition, that very beginning part, introduces the characters, setting, and conflict. We find out who we are dealing with, where we are, what's going on. That moment of conflict is going to then rise into the rising action. So the conflict is the source of tension in the story. Everything's going great. Boom, tornado. Everything's going great. Hey, look, this volcano is going to erupt. That's the conflict. The rising action are the events leading up to the climax. And it can almost feel like stairs sometimes because you have like major action, calm down, major action, calm down. But each of those is just getting more climactic until the last big piece of action. So like the last battle that wins the war ends up being the climax, which is the turning point. It's the tension. It's going to build up until that point and then no more after that. Sometimes you'll see some stuff in the falling action, but again, that's just authors taking some liberties with the plot points. The falling action is the events following the climax. Things are starting to tie up. People are calming down. There's not so many like big action points at that point. And then the resolution shows how all the problems were worked out. Everybody's happy now. Now we kind of have an idea how they're going to go on about their lives after the book is over or after the movie is over. Remember, pause this if you aren't done copying down notes. Finally, we need to know about foreshadowing. It's a literary device in which a writer gives an advance hint of what is to come later in the story. It often appears at the beginning of a story or a chapter and helps the reader develop expectations about the coming events in a story. So like the cartoon says, foreshadowing, and then somebody asks if it's going to be on the test. That's foreshadowing that it is going to be on the, just like this is going to be on the test. Huh? Hint, hint. But maybe we can slip something in that is more important later on at the end of the story. Maybe you need to know that a character has a certain power that comes in handy at the end of the story. Maybe you need to know that Harry and Voldemort share a lot of similarities, so it comes important at the end when you find out that Harry has a part of Voldemort in him. That's foreshadowing. So think about what attracts you to a book, a story, a movie, or a television show. Is it suspense? Is it the plot? Is it the characters? What is it? Hopefully you finished your notes. Remember, you can go back and watch this anytime. Go back and finish your notes if you need to. Make sure you bring your notes to class tomorrow. Thanks for watching.